What's up everybody, Superdorks fan here for another car review. This is of course the 2005 Chevy Cobalt SS Supercharged. Huge thanks to Ryan, aka that Cobalt SS guy, for allowing me to review his awesome Cobalt SS for you guys today. So about the 2005 Cobalt SS, well, these were really exciting whenever they first came out. You know, they were going along with the rest of the imports and whatnot, you know, offering forced induction here in their economy cars, and I think was really cool, especially, you know, using a supercharger here in the Cobalt SS. It gave it a little bit of a different character than some of the other stuff like the SRT4s and whatnot, and I think they actually did a really good job on the body kit and stuff as well. This one has a few, you know, visual improvements here, like the blacked out headlights and the new taillights and things like that. But overall, I mean, I love, you know, the factory spoiler looked great, and I loved, you know, this ground effects kit that they gave it. Gave it a really nice aggressive look that differentiated it a lot from the standard Cobalts. And otherwise, I mean, it was a good shape. I thought that, you know, I loved the quad tail lamps there in the back. I thought that was a cool touch even from the beginning. And overall, I think they're, you know, still pretty good looking cars to this day. First, for the interior of the 2005 Cobalt SS Supercharged, well, it's you know, pretty typical Chevy for this time. But first things first, sitting down in these seats. Now, these are not the optional Recars. There was a package you could get for these that had the Recars and a limited slip front diff. This car does not have that package, but it does have the limited slip diff added later on aftermarket. But as far as these seats go, they're pretty supportive seats, though, I gotta say. They have some Alcantara type material here in the middle, and they have some really good bolstering, though, I gotta say. Torso support is you know, a little bit wider, you know, so it accommodates all body types easily, but really beefy bolstering, and thigh support is also nice and beefy as well, so they actually feel really aggressive, and I like them a lot. Next to the steering wheel in the Cobalt SS, which is a little bit different than a standard Cobalt's here, and you know, it is leather wrapped and seems a little bit beefier. And the 9-3 grip is okay. You do have this plastic that extends pretty far back here, but it's still a pretty good grip overall, and nice little 10 and 2 notches. And overall, though, it's nicely leather wrapped and feels pretty good in your hands. Next is the gauges in the Cobalt SS Supercharged here, which are very cool. You have a talk armor that goes up to 8,000 there with a red line of 6,500. And you know, nice font, you know, pretty attractive looking gauges there to spice them up over standard Cobalts here. And the best thing is the added boost gauge that they actually put in the A-pillar here, which is something you usually see in aftermarket setups, but that was the way it came from the factory, with an autometer boost gauge, which is a really cool touch. And I think that's a really great place for a boost gauge, so honestly, because a lot of other companies put them down here somewhere in the center area and it distracts you from looking at the road. It's right in your line of sight, really, and it's really a perfect position, so great to have that as well. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, well, as you can see, this one has a lot of custom pieces done that the owner actually hand drew, and so that's a very cool thing, and so definitely personalizes it a lot over a standard Cobalt, but you can imagine it's your typical Chevy plastic from the time, and so nothing special there anyway, so I think, you know, personalizing it is a lot cooler anyway. And then he also has a custom head unit in here, which, you know, again, standard Cobalt head units for nothing special, so swapping that out here for a nicer touchscreen makes a lot of sense. And then coming down to the climate controls and whatnot, you know, it's typical plasticky Chevy stuff from 10 years ago, like you would expect, but it gets the job done. You know, all the basics are there. As far as storage space in the Cobalt SS, it's not bad. So you have a map pocket here in the door, no bottle holder, but you do have, you know, a pretty good sized map pocket there. You have another little kind of tray right by this power outlet here, but it's very small. You can fit change in there, and that's about it. And then you have 2 cup holders, which are a decent size. And then you have another little slot here next to the e-brake, and then you have another little tray behind, you know, in between the 2 seats, I should say, and then another 2 cup holders there for the back seat. So overall, you know, a good amount of stuff that's reachable here for the driver. Speaking about the back seat, though, it's pretty good and spacious. So there are leather seats there in the back, and they actually seem to have a little more room than most average coupes. And so, I mean, I still wouldn't use it all the time, but I think, you know, the person that actually drove this car up here, Ryan, he had 2 people back there along with him for the ride, and so, you know, it's definitely usable for sure. You know, and like most coupes, though, it's not the most convenient, and if you're going to be using it all the time, you might as well just get a 4-door. Trunk space in the Cobalt SS is actually pretty good. Now, he has added subwoofers back there, which of course limits the space a good amount there. But you know, as you can see, you can imagine without the subwoofer box in there, it would have a good amount of storage space there in the trunk, and pretty average for the segment, you know, type of car that this is. So overall, pretty usable. All right, so start up and go for a drive. Cobalt SS here has a typical Chevy key, which has been replaced here with the whole ignition switch thing. This one has the new ignition. So anyway, just slip it into the slot, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2005 Cobalt SS Supercharged. So, first things you notice in this car, well, the seating position is a little awkward for me. It just takes some getting used to here because the seat bottom is very long. So if you don't have super long legs, it can be a little different. Otherwise, the visibility is great. You have a good view forward. The hood drops down nicely, so you don't have to look over anything there. View out of the sides is great, you know, in the coupe here with these large windows, and view out of the back is pretty good as well. On this bumpy park road, though, cruising, one thing I do have to say is, now this one has PC Racing coilovers, so it's a little bit of a firmer ride, although they're on the softer setting right now. But you do hear a lot of rattles and shimmies and things. You might even be able to hear them on camera here that, you know, it doesn't feel like the tightest put together thing out there. I will gotta admit that. And this one is actually fairly low miles to it, around 72,000 miles on this one here. So pretty nice example still. But yeah, it just doesn't feel the tightest as far as, you know, quality and you know, the materials and whatnot. All right, so let's turn onto this back road here, see how it does. Spin galore in first gear. Okay, so that's exciting. So we have a 2-liter supercharged 4-cylinder engine in this thing that does 205 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque. And man, first gear it just spins. I was not expecting that at all. And you get some torque steer along with that as well, of course. And but you know, it's not like hard to manage or anything. It still goes in a straight line pretty okay. But yeah, second gear is definitely where you put down the power. Got some really nice supercharger sounds there though, and great sounds out of the back too. This one now, the only other modifications it has are a Megan Racing catback exhaust, and then it has the K&N Typhoon intake up front. It sounds pretty good, I gotta say. Another acceleration. It just lights up first. Second is where it's at for sure. It's fun though, man. It's been a long time since I drove a car with this little horsepower that lit up the front wheels. It might be the only time I've ever had that happen. But it's a ton of fun. 0 to 60 time for these back when they first came out was 6.1 seconds, which is respectable for a car with, you know, 205 horsepower. And you know, it helped that these were fairly lightweight, just a hair under 3,000 pounds, so not too much weight to move around, but not exactly super lightweight either. Other things to note, the shifter isn't the easiest thing to use, but it does work fairly well. He does have a short throw shifter in here, which certainly helps, because otherwise it'd be even longer, and I'm guessing more imprecise. But it's not too bad. It just takes a little getting used to. Going around a few little corners here now so far. The steering definitely feels loose and fairly imprecise, honestly. Doesn't really have much feeling to it. There's a little feeling, but it just does not feel very precise at all, unfortunately. Other things to note though, I mean, the handling is actually pretty good here with these coilovers. The owner says that the stock suspension doesn't handle very well at all, so the coilovers are a much needed upgrade apparently. Coming up to this tight corner I always take though, let's see how the body roll is here with these coilovers. And okay, it feels heavier than I was expecting, but it sticks it pretty well here. You know, the coilovers certainly help, but it feels like there's a lot more weight there than you would expect from a car that weighs, you know, not even 3,000 pounds. But yeah, I'm going to drive this car around for a little while longer here, get a better feel for the suspension and the handling, and I'll come back and give you guys some final impressions. Alright, so I've been driving the 2005 Cobalt SS for a while longer here now, and the more I drive it, the better it gets, because it was a little iffy, honestly, to first get going there. I just felt that it was kind of hard to trust. Nothing was very confidence-inspiring because, like I said, there was a little bit of disconnect here with the steering, and the brake pedal also has a good amount of travel, and once you do get into the meat of the pad, it doesn't give you a lot of confidence either. Of course, that's something you can fix easily in the aftermarket, but just, the setup currently, from the factory here, doesn't give you a lot of confidence in those ways. Now, this suspension, the more that I lean on it, the more I see just how great these coilovers are, and it does handle very well once you can build up that trust in them. But otherwise, though, I mean, it's a pretty good thing to drive. Like the power is pretty good. Honestly, it's one of those cars that makes you feel like you're going faster than you actually are, because you like get into it and you're really getting on it, and you're like, man, I'm probably flying. And you look down at your speedometer and you're like, oh wait, I'm not going that fast. So it's one of those kind of cars, which I think is great because it means that you have a lot of fun, but you don't have to worry about being thrown in jail immediately as well. So that's always appreciated. But it is still a little bit disjointed. It doesn't feel really tight or confidence inspiring, and that's the part that's missing. Another thing, this shifter is pretty vague, honestly. Third gear is really all kind of a little bit of a all over the place kind of guessing thing. Of course, now these kind of things are things you can learn, and like I said, the more that I drive this car, the more that I can learn about it and kind of lean on it and figure out what it likes and what it doesn't like. But compared to other cars that right out of the box are very easy and straightforward and everything's very sharp and well defined and all that kind of stuff, this just certainly doesn't have that quality about it. But again, that doesn't detract from the experience once you get used to it. But if you test drive this versus stuff like a Civic Si or a GTI or stuff like that, you'll see a stark contrast, I think, in how they feel. It still just feels a lot heavier than 2,900 pounds, or 2,991 I think is the exact weight that I read. So just barely under 3,000 there, but it feels more like, I don't know, it's like 3,200 or something like that. So yeah, but I mean, it does, it's a fun car. Obviously it would not be my first choice. I still think that the Civic Si from this time period, I think they started making them in 2006. That is the king of, the front wheel drive, fun little sporty, coupes. To me, that still is the #1 top dog. It can't be beat in my opinion. This is fun. It's a slightly different type of fun. You have more torque, obviously, with this than you do with the Civic. So the Civic, you really got to ring out. Whereas this, it actually really does love 2,500 RPMs and just stomping on it, and it'll give you power all day long. It does like to spin those front wheels, though, which is another thing. Usually front-wheel drive cars are pretty decent in the snow, and this one does, like I said earlier on, have the limited slip diff from the upgraded package that this doesn't have, but it was added later on. So the limited slip should help you with snow and wet conditions and things like that. But because of how much it loves to spin first gear, I mean, I was even just pulling out from a stop sign and just turning left, and I got on it a little bit and immediately lit up those tires. So it might be a little tricky to get started in the snow and things like that as well, although I'm sure snow tires would help a lot. Otherwise, though, I mean, it sounds great. It's Megan Racing catback. It crackles and pops like a champ, and it's a fun thing, though, still. I mean, going into some corners here, it's just, you pitch it in, and you got an initial little bit of a lean here with these coilovers, but then it just settles down and really does a good job of sticking. And yeah, and the steering weight is actually pretty good too. If it was a little sharper and less disconnected, I think it would really be fantastic steering, because you do get a good amount of feel through the wheel here. It's just kind of, like I said, it's so disconnected. It's a little different, but really super tight corner here. We'll go down in a second. Easy to rev match the downshifts. Clutch is fairly easy to use as well. But just, yeah, you push it and it feels a lot heavier. It does feel solid in its weight, though, so it doesn't feel lightweight or necessarily agile, unfortunately, either. But yeah, unfortunately, this is just from a time when Chevy still was not in their peak, and all the interior materials and stuff are well behind, stuff like, the Volkswagen GTI and Civic Si once again. And, you know, like I said, there are a good amount of rattles. Every time you hit a pothole, you hear, you know, a couple of different things rattling, and, you know, they're loose or whatever. And again, that's just because it's a 2005 Chevrolet. Nothing against Chevy, but just, you know, the plastics and things in the Cobalts weren't the greatest. You had to step up to some nicer models to get some nicer materials. That supercharger line is awesome though. And one other awesome thing about this car is the value proposition of it, because you can get, you know, a Cobalt SS here. I mean, they've really dropped in value a lot, especially because of the ignition switch thing and all that kind of stuff. And once you get that fixed, you don't have to worry about that. But the value has still gone down on these just because of the name being tarnished or whatever. And so you can get, you know, a nice one for probably $5 grand or something these days. And you know, even cheaper than that if it's not perfect. So it's just I mean, you get a lot of car for that much money, and you know, all the competition is, you know, a good amount more expensive. And whenever you're looking for something, you know, that's really inexpensive, and, you know, a first car or something like that, you know, a couple $1,000 makes a big difference. And so that could give this car the edge, you know, to a lot of, you know, buyers that are out there looking at them. Because yes, I don't think it's the best in its class, but is it the best value in its class? Most likely. Like I said, it's gonna be hard to beat, and honestly, the owner said he hasn't had any issues with this. So as far as reliability and stuff like that goes, I heard he said some of the turbo ones and some of the newer ones, because these did get switched over for a more powerful turbo version a few years down the road, and those ones seem to have some more issues, but these supercharged ones seem to be pretty good as far as reliability and stuff like that goes. But yes, that's about it as far as all my impressions on the Cobalt here. You know, this is a cool little car, and you have to remember, this is back when Chevy was just getting back into doing sporty stuff like this. There wasn't any kind of sporty Cavalier, really, or anything like that. You know, it's just like the 80s. So it was really great that they even made a Cobalt SS, and I think it's a really great, you know, first try. And like I said, I'm sure they improved them over the years, and improved, you know, all the little things about them. But yeah, I think it's a pretty cool little car here. Like I said, a fantastic value proposition as well. So anyway, huge thanks once again to Ryan for making a little trip out to Pittsburgh here for me to be able to review this. Let me know your thoughts on the Cobalt SS, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.